If you're a boxing fan, you know who my next guest is. He's one of the best trainers in the world, and he was part of Roy Jones Jr. camp for his fight last weekend against Mike Tyson. It is Tom Yankello joining me here on the program. Tom, how's it going?
Hey, James. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Hey, it's great to talk to you. What better to talk to someone who's part of the talk of the town last week? I mean, I cover MMA and boxing, but everyone was talking about this Mike Tyson fight, and it just really captivated everyone's attention. The fight goes to a draw, though, Mike Tyson, Roy Jones Jr. How was your assessment of the fight? What did you think of it?
Oh, I thought it was a very entertaining bout. I think people enjoyed it. It was just an entertaining event overall. I thought it was really a grand slam fight. I think the fight was, it's very subjective. I had heard so many viewpoints from so many people, and Roy. I felt like Roy landed, some really nice jabs and some pop shots. Mike landed some good body shots. Mike was aggressive at times, but Roy was able to show his showmanship and his movement and make Mike miss a lot too. So I think that some of the punches, even like in the second round, I was watching it last night, and one of the hooks that they said that they thought Mike landed, Roy actually landed the punch. So, it's all what, and a lot of people, Mike Tyson's just their guy. So I've heard a lot of people think that he won, but then Roy, the people that love Roy's won. People in my gym, they felt Roy won. So just like the judges, I mean, Vinny Paz he had like Roy up by 3 or 4 points, and then the one had it, Mike up by 5 or 6, and then one had it a draw. So it was all what you're really looking at, what angle you're looking at it. When I was in the fight, I had my corner 3 guys. We kept on talking between rounds because I wanted to be able to give Roy an accurate, whether he was up, whether he was down, what he needed to do to win the fight, win the rounds. And we were all feeling like the fight was very, very close. We felt like he won something. We felt like the 6th and the 7th round, we felt like he won. It felt like the 7th, he started to let his hands go. He was throwing 4 or 5 punch combinations, and I felt like he landed some sneaky shots that like I said, if you go on your YouTube and you hit the 3 buttons in the right-hand corner, you could actually slow YouTube videos down. And if you really watch, he landed a lot of little short, sneaky shots that people didn't give him credit for. In the 6th round, he landed a beautiful left hand right down the middle at the end of the round. It was completely flush. And, it's really, I felt Roy edged it, but, I felt like some of those rounds could have went either way. Like a lot of them could have went either way. I scored it. I was trying to score it last night. Such a hard fight to score. I had actually had 5 rounds and Vinny Paz did that. He scored a bunch of rounds even. I had like 5 rounds even. I really had a hard time. I felt like the only rounds that were somewhat definitive, I thought, and none of them were outright definitive, but I felt Roy really won the 7th, and I felt like he won the 6th round. He landed a really good shot at the end of the round, and I felt like he edged that round. I felt like Mike kind of won the 4th round because he did some things there at the end of the 4th. But the rest of the rounds, I think those were the only 3 rounds that you really could watch it. You have to really watch it to really pick a winner of the rounds. Like at least 5 of those rounds were like completely could have went either way. Very subjective.
No, absolutely. And I like the point you brought up about slowing the tape down, because it is very important to point that, because boxing, it's a fast sport, right? You miss some things, right? So if you're going back and watching those things, I think that's a great point you made. And I would recommend that to anyone watching, because even though these guys are in their 50s, like they were throwing a lot, right? So that's one thing to sort of consider as well. Is there anything, you've watched this back now, is there anything you would have changed with Roy now that you've watched the fight and been able to go back and look at it?
Well, I felt like, if they were to do it again, I think he would be a little bit more the unknown of going there with Mike Tyson. If you notice, like a lot of people thought in the first 4 rounds that fight was going to start to evolve more for Mike, because they thought Roy was getting tired. But what Roy was doing is Roy was starting to getting his range and his time and getting a little bit more relaxed. I think there was a little bit of that unknown, that aura being in there with Mike Tyson that can actually make you get a little bit winded, because you're just like, next time they would fight, if they would ever do it again, I think that unknown's gone. Roy would have the advantage of being more relaxed and pick up from what he did in those last 3 rounds, being able to carry that into the beginning of the fight. Mike always has that great puncher puncher's chance. He has a great punch. I mean, he's one of the most devastating punchers in the history of boxing. So, I mean, the fight could, always never know what could happen. But, to answer your question, I feel like, he could have used his jab more, could have landed more jabs. I think a lot of it had to do, like I said, with just finding your rhythm and finding your timing and finding your range. I think, another thing that people don't put into consideration is that that fight could have went a couple different ways as well if there was a 3-minute round instead of a 2-minute round. I mean, you're looking at two guys that have been fighting 3-minute rounds. They haven't fought a 2-minute round since they were amateurs when they were 14, 15 years old. So that's not their pace. So they had to adjust to something. And that didn't even happen until the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks that they announced that California State Athletic Commission said they were going to make it a 2-minute round. So the whole time we were still training for 3 minutes. And we had always been training for 3 minutes. And so was Mike. So, that fight could have evolved into something different when they both started to, within the round, started to find the range, because that's muscle memory for them. And that's what people don't understand. Like there was a lot of missing going on in that fight. A lot of punches that weren't landed by either guy. Punches that were just, and they were both guys, for that matter, to give them both credit, were starting to find their range. And now the bell rings, they go back and they have to start all over again. And that's just not their pace and not their way of finding range. It's muscle memory. People don't realize what a 3-minute round, the guy's been fighting that his whole life. And now you take it to 2 minutes. They haven't found their rhythm in a 2-minute round. It's very hard for them to find their rhythm in a 2-minute round, especially because I've never done it,
Yeah, no, there was a lot of craziness heading into the fight, just with, the commission and all that stuff. So I'm sure that was the headache as well, that hopefully you won't have to deal with, next time if there is a rematch or anything along that line. But you sort of touched a bit on it there with Tyson. Was there anything that was, unexpected, surprising from Tyson that you weren't expecting, heading into the fight?
I was very impressed on him. He was in great shape, which I knew that he had enough time to be in great shape, because originally the fight was supposed to be September 12th. They pushed it back for him to get in great shape. So, he definitely took full advantage of that. He came in great shape. And I felt like he was very on point defensively. It was way harder to hit. Like I said, a lot of it had to do, I believe, like I said, Roy had to get a little bit more time and get his rhythm and gauge his timing and just a little bit, for both guys, like I said, that could have been, equally. But I felt like he was elusive. He moved his head very, very well. His timing to try to counter, he really would come off with some really good counter attempts. I felt like a lot of things that they thought was actually hitting Roy, it was Roy pulling away. And like I said, these guys still had great hand speed. And I think there was a lot of good defense in that fight, actually. A lot of things that weren't going on that people don't see unless they have the experienced eye. I think the referee could have broke the clinches a little bit more in a 2-minute round. I think there was, our thing was to initiate a clinch to slow down the pace of Mike Tyson, because he's like a freight train. You can't, and on the blueprint, people have always been successful of clinching him and walking him back and making him start over. It's just like a train. Every time it's got to start all over, that burns out the engine, because but once it gets started and it starts coming at you, that's a problem. So we were there to initiate a clinch. We were not there to hold and just try to survive. We were there to initiate a clinch. I feel that the referee, for whatever reason, whether he felt like he wanted to maybe, what his agenda was for the clinches, whether he was trying to let Roy, it was an exhibition. So did he feel like he was letting Roy get time to rest in there? It wasn't the case, because you're wrestling around with a bigger guy, a big strong guy like Mike. That's not really to Roy's advantage. His thing was to initiate a clinch, walk him back, then make the freight train have to start all over again. And with Mike, if he was letting that be in there, Mike really wasn't working. And in the past, if you watch fights, he does become docile and submissive in the clinches. He showed that. So that's why I knew that, that was part of our game plan, to always initiate a clinch, stay away from the ropes, stay away from the corners where he's always devastates people. Anytime you're getting, and we were in a small ring. So it was very, very hard for Roy to have. He didn't have a lot of room to have the movement that he would want to have, and so he had to do a lot of clinching. But we weren't there to hold. We were there to, bump up, clinch, walking back, start the fight over again in the middle of the ring. That was the plan, and that had been the blueprint that Evander Holyfield used against Mike, Buster Douglas, other great fighters like Sugar Ray Leonard when he beat Marvin Hagler, keeping the fight in the middle of the ring, moving and then clinching and keeping the fight in the middle of the ring. So that was the strategy. Staying in the clinches as long as they were was a little bit where I felt the referee could have intervened there sooner. And there would have been a lot more action if he wouldn't have let them guys clinch as long. So that was my take on the event.
Very, very well said. I loved a lot of the points you made there. I sort of referenced it. Do you anticipate a rematch? Maybe not next, but do you think they will have a rematch just with it ending in a draw?
I think it could happen. I think enough people were entertained by it. I think enough people were in doubt of what happened, and I think a lot of people, like I said, a lot of people felt Mike won, a lot of people felt Roy won, a lot of people didn't know, and I think that if you were to ask somebody after they fought 8 rounds that night, would you like to see another 2 rounds? I think the answer would have been yes by everybody. So I think that people would like to watch it again. I think people would enjoy it. I think the commentary was fantastic. Snoop Dogg was very entertaining, and just the whole production was a beautiful thing. I just thought it was just very well done. I think people would enjoy it again. And I think it would be a better fight because I just think that Roy would find his range a little bit better. And then hopefully we could convince it to be a 3-minute round next time, maybe some things like that, and maybe even a bigger ring. That would be, like I said, Mike was the A side. He wanted to fight Roy. Roy accepted. Mike kind of got the ring size. They got the ring size that they wanted. So I don't know if that would be able to be negotiated for a bigger ring next time or not. But some of the things that I think just could make that a better fight would be maybe possibly that. But at the same time, I think the most important thing would be to make it maybe a 3-minute round. Or if they were to go with 2-minute rounds, let them fight 10 rounds. Let them fight 12 rounds. They already fought an 8-round exhibition. Make it a 12-round title fight exhibition. 12 rounds or title fights. So maybe let them go more rounds.
You talked about Snoop Dogg being on commentary. I don't know how much mixed martial arts you pay attention to, but what did you think of Israel Adesanya on there? I was kind of surprised that they brought him in there just because he is in MMA.
Yeah, I thought he was good as well. And he. It's funny how, small world in time. I actually trained a fighter that actually fought him in New Zealand. I trained Brian Minto, and he had fought him back in, it's been a while now. I'm trying to think how long it's been, probably 5 years ago, or maybe even 6. But it was. I think he did a great job.
So do I. Yeah, I was really impressed. I thought him and Morrow, the chemistry it worked, and it seemed like everything was really on point. The whole event I thought was really great. I think one of the questions that people want answered as well. Do you see Roy continuing to take exhibition fights going forward, or is it possible we could see him go back and take a pro fight?
I don't think there's anything that is totally out of the question with Roy. He's the ultimate competitor. I don't think he would fight a professional boxing match unless it was a real challenge against somebody that he had a reason to fight. Guys of the past that he's boxed, and I know that he would love to box again. I don't think that he would just box to box anyone. I think those days are over. It would have to be a significant challenge, as an Antonio Tarver, Bernard Hopkins. I know even they were talking Anderson Silva.
I'm glad you brought him up because the UFC cut him, so he can kind of do what he wants now, right?
Right, exactly.
And that had been rumored for years with Silva and Roy Jones when Silva was the middleweight champion in the UFC.
Right, so that's always a possibility. So it would be name guys like that and fight Mike again. Those are 3 or 4 fights that maybe that he would do it. I don't think he would ever do it unless for some reason someone was able to give him a fight to get him ranked in the top 15, or to be able to give him a chance to fight for the Cruiserweight World Championship, which I know is something that he's always wanted to win, one of the major Cruiserweight titles. I think that's something that, that he could possibly bite on as well. But, like I said, he wouldn't just fight to fight. It would have to be a significant challenge.
What was it like being in camp with Roy for this fight?
Oh, it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. It was great.
Yeah.
We put about 9 weeks in together, 10 weeks in together sporadically. We had started to train in August, but then we kept on having, breaks in between our training to try to spread it out. Because, as you're training a fighter, you want them to climb the mountain, but you don't want them to peak too soon, and then he'll start to crash. So we kind of like staggered our training throughout the months there, and trained 2 weeks in Florida with him, but then he trained probably 7 or 8 weeks in Pittsburgh with me. And we have a great rapport. We enjoy working together, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Love to do it again.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. Is there any stories that we haven't heard about Roy, just, getting to work with him, any cool stuff that you could share here with my audience? Because I know, Roy's a character. That's the one thing, not just his fighting skill, but outside the cage as well. I'm sure there's a lot of cool things you've got to experience with him.
Well, I'll tell you, he's just, he loves to have fun, man. He's one thing we do together is when we watch the fights together, we shoot pool. We have a pool competition.
Really? Okay. That's interesting.
He loves to shoot pool. So do I, And
now, does it get competitive? Do you guys get at each other if someone's winning or whatever? Or is it pretty friendly?
Super competitive.
I was going to say, yeah, the truth comes out. Yeah.
To the point where, it's funny because he's very good, but we've watched probably, I think, three fights together, and during this camp, I think we watched 3, maybe even 4. Now I take that back. We watched 4 fights together, and the first 2 nights that we played pool, I got the better of him. I won the majority of the game. And then the third night that we played, another night that we watched fights and we played, he won. And then after he won, the 4th night he refused to play me, and he says, I have the title. I'm not giving you a rematch,
Okay.
Just things like that. He'll do that because he's just super competitive. He wants to leave on when he was winning. And the first 2 times that he lost, he had to keep on playing until he won. But once he won, he wasn't going to give me a chance back.
Right. He's like, I'm done. I'm good. We're good. We can just end it here.
And I kept on trying to get him to, my pool table's in the basement, and I have somewhere to watch the fights in the basement. And then I have a couple places up in my upstairs to watch the fight. And he refused to even watch the fight downstairs because he knew that I could possibly lure him to the pool table. So he wouldn't even watch the fights. And all the other times we watched the fights down in my basement, and this time he refused to even walk in the basement because he had got his wins on me, and he decided that he has the title, and he play. And then what's the funny part about it is Russ Amber, who's in our corner.
Yeah, we know. I'm from Canada. I know Russ Amber quite well. He used to have a show here on TSN back in the day.
Well, there you go. Because it's so funny because Russ is telling me that he just loves to shoot pool, which I didn't know, because I knew Russ, but this is the first time I really got a chance to get to know him. And we started talking about pool, and he loves to pool. So he's telling me that he's gone other places with Roy, and he shot pool with Roy. And he starts to tell me this story, how he was beating Roy.
Same thing.
And then he says, Roy, finally he beats me. Probably the 3rd or 4th time we played. It sounded like an identical story that I just told you. And he said, after he beat me, he would never fight me. He would never play me again. I said, are you kidding me? I said, that's what he just did to me in camp, Oh, so then I called Roy. I said, I see you do this. This is a regular for you. I was the only one who did this to. I said, what are you talking about? I said, Russ just told me. He says, you played him, and you couldn't beat him. And then once you beat him, you told him you had the title and you weren't giving him a rematch. And he laughed, because he just thought he was just so funny because me and Russ would just start talking about pool. We started trading stories about playing Roy, and it was the same identical story. Oh, it was just,
it must be a combat sports thing. Joe Rogan, who's a UFC commentator, is a big pool player as well. So I think there's something in the water there. If you're training,
oh, yeah.
I guess it's something interesting there. Just a couple more questions. We'll wrap things up again. I really appreciate the time. Obviously, the other sort of talking point from the event was the knockout from Jake Paul on Nate Robinson. Were you able to see that live, or were you in the back? Like, did you actually get to see the knockout?
Yeah, that's the thing I've been asked, but I unfortunately didn't really get a chance to see it. I saw it more or less out of the corner of my eye. I was actually right in the process of warming Roy up, and I haven't been able to do it since. But I watched a little bit of it. Didn't get a chance to see the knockout as much. I started to watch the first round a little bit, and I think Jake Paul just looked like definitely the more polished boxer, and you could tell that he had experience. One of the guys that I go way back with in the amateurs when I was training amateur boxers a lot, and I had national champion was BJ Flores, who worked with him. Looked like he did a great job with him. I had talked to BJ before the fight. He had told me that Jake had really trained hard and was in great shape and had sparred with a lot of real professional boxers. And he kind of told me, he says, "I'm telling you, Tom, this is going to be a mismatch. He's going to really handle Nate, and it was all truth, But unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to see the thing in its entirety. I'm so hectic since the fight, busy back in my gym doing other things, getting ready for some other competitions, and then time that I haven't been able to go back and review the fight. I've just reviewed Mike and Roy's fight again a couple of times. Maybe I'll get a chance to watch that this weekend.
There's been a big, obviously, debate about the YouTube stars coming in boxing. And, there's, obviously the naysayers who say, no, it's kind of watering down our sport. And then there's the others that are saying, look, we're getting a whole new audience here with people tuning in to watch the fights. Where do you stand on that in terms of the YouTube stars coming in here, like Jake Paul, Logan Paul, these guys trying to box each other?
Well, I think it helps boxing. I think it helps boxing in a broad spectrum because you're bringing people that were never hip to the sport or never really watched the sport or never were interested in the sport. And so you're drawing interest to the sport. And I think a lot of times when people watch boxing for the first time, they're surprised how much they really enjoy it. People that have never watched it before. And I know people that I know locally that come to a local boxing show and they're always come back. They've always come back. So I think that, just initiating more people to watch boxing is going to generate more fans, and then they'll become more interested in the science of the sport, in some of the elite boxers, and maybe they would have never watched a boxing match. So I'm all for it. I mean, anything that generates interest into the sport from people that would have never given it a chance, but they've developed this love and this relationship with watching. This interest of watching these YouTube stars, and then they become boxers. Has brought these fans into watching boxing. So I think it's just bringing more fans into the sport. I think it can do nothing but become a good thing.
And that kind of ties into my last question here. You had a great quote, and I actually agree with you here. You were talking about, boxing's decline in the U.S., and I'm going to read the quote here. You said, boxing used to be so dominant in the U.S., but like baseball, its following has declined. I want to save boxing. I want to reach a lot of people and teach it to the world. Do you feel like we are turning a corner here? Because I just personally, as someone, looking from the outside, I think we are seeing sort of, with events like this and, Deontay Wilder and Fury last year, I think we are seeing sort of a bit of a comeback here. Where do you stand now after making that quote?
I think so. I think right now a lot of things are in limbo because of COVID, of course, but there's a lot of really good prospects coming up. I actually have some good ones myself. So a lot of guys that really can put a really good name to the sport and really good action fighters as well. There's a ton of good amateurs coming up. Like I have a lot of amateurs I still work with, and I just think that the sport will resurge again. I think it's always a sport that boxing will never die. It has its ebbs and flows, but it always, you know, if it comes down, it comes back up. It goes, you know, it kind of always is. I feel like it's always like this, but it's always there. You know, it's always climbing in a sense. Sometimes it'll go down a little bit. I don't think it's ever hit something that's been rock bottom. There's always been somebody that's a network that's wants it or picks it back up, or, you know, and I think that, I think as long as we can get back to normal, I mean, I think there's some uprising, really good prospects coming, and some, you know, in the welterweight division right now. Look at the fight coming up Saturday with Errol Spence and Danny Garcia. That's just a great, that's a really interesting fight, you know, especially what a comeback story is Spence. I mean, Spence was like, I mean, and to pick Danny Garcia for your first fight back is just, wow. You know, I mean, they were to fight with all things, without any of these things being considered. I thought that fight was a really, really good fight. I kind of leaned towards Spence, but man, with all these things that's happened to Spence, and he's been laid off for 15, 16 months and had that accident, and you just don't know, you know, how that's going to affect him under the lights and what he's been doing. And you don't know what his training camps look like. So there's a lot of unknown with Spence. I felt like even the last fight when he fought Porter, and the fight before that, he was kind of, I think that he blows up in weight a little bit bigger than he should, and has to come down to 147. And the last couple of fights, I think he's been having a real difficult time making 147. And I think in the last fight, he didn't look as strong to me against Porter. Even though Porter's a strong fighter, I just felt like Spence still at the same time wasn't as strong as I'd seen him in other fights. And, you know, being that he's been off all this time, and he's had trouble in the past making that weight, I think that this, you know, Danny Garcia's chances of winning the fight are looking better and better and better and better as the days get close to this fight, just in my mind of thinking about it. I think it's just one heck of a fight. Man, I tell you, I think it's almost a pick and fight right now in my mind. It's really going to come down to how good Spence is after this situation. Like, what Spence are we going to see? Are we going to see at least the one that fought Sean Porter? You know, the one that fought Sean Porter, I think he could edge out Danny Garcia. But if he's anything less than that, man, I tell you, I have to lean towards Garcia. If he's anything less than what he was against Porter, you know, if he's what he was against Porter, I would say he'll edge Garcia in that fight. But, man, it's just interesting, really interesting fight. Either way, it should be a great fight. It's not no one-sided fight by any means.
This was a great interview, Tom. We could probably talk for like another hour. This was so much knowledge. This is one of those interviews I got to go back and watch because there's so many good points that you made. Just really detailed answers. I really appreciate it. Anything you want to plug, any social media, anything like that? I'll give you the last word, sir.
Yeah, I have my YouTube channel, and I just started 2 years ago. We're just getting ready to have 100,000 subscribers, and I put out instructional videos twice a week, little small instructionals about boxing technique and fundamentals and foundation and moves and tricks that you can work on for all levels of boxers, and people that are not even that have never boxed but want to try to start with the sport. There's all these instructionals that I have on foundation and teaching them the basics, and then building off of that. And they can go to my World Class Boxing channel on YouTube. And like I said, I put out two videos a week usually. And like I said, for all levels, for people that are just interested in the sport, even want to know a little bit more, even if they're a fan and they want to they're watching boxing and they like to know a little bit about all the little things that go on in a boxing match. I break down a lot of things that have happened in past fights as well. And then I have my Instagram. I also is very informative with boxing. It's at Tom Yankello Boxing. And then I also have my Facebook page, Tom Yankello's World Class Boxing Gym on Facebook. So you can follow me on all those platforms.